We've been in Monastir, Tunisia for the duration of the COVID-19 quarantine. And we still can't go anywhere because all of the borders are closed. But Tunisia is beginning to kind of get back to normal, and things within the country are opening up, and now travel within the country between regions is now allowed. June 25th, 2020. We've rented a Volkswagen Polo in Tunisia, and we're headed out to drive through into the Sahara Desert. 3-hour drive today. One of the things I like about renting cars, you end up driving a bunch of different cars and getting a feel for like what car you want. Like, oh, if I were to buy a compact car, it's like these Polos are pretty good little cars.
It's good to be moving again.
Yeah. Our whole goal is to drive down to Tozer. Talking to different locals in Tunisia, Tozer has been a name that has come up multiple different times as you've got to see Tozer, you've got to see Tozer. But about halfway there's a national park called Bou-Hedma National Park. And so this is a perfect opportunity. We get to see what Tunisia is like, and then we also get to see some of the wildlife. On our way down there, we are using Google Maps, and Google Maps was not taking us in the correct direction. The maps are not super accurate. So right now we're driving through an olive grove, hoping that the road doesn't get so bad that the car gets stuck. So that's an off-ramp, sortie. Okay, looks like maybe that ramp there. Oh, okay, tolls. Let's see. Ayers. We've just arrived at our Airbnb. For tonight, we got a few Airbnbs lined up for this trip. This is this one. It's all good. Looks like it did on Airbnb. It's like an apartment on a family's house. They really wanted to show us around, so they took us over to this plot of land. Okay. We're going to visit the family farm of the place that we're staying with. It's nearby. 4 kilometers, I think. Hey, buddy. How you doing? Are you good? You doing good? Scratching your neck? Some of this was lost in translation a bit, but their great-grandfather was like a general during Tunisia's liberation from France. He was given by the Tunisian government a chunk of land. One of the aunts of this family has a piece of property in a horse stable in which they do competitions with the horses. Some of them are owned by their family and their aunt, and then a lot of the horses are owned by different families around the village. Yeah, you're okay. When you're in a foreign country, and somebody that you can't communicate with fully because there's a language barrier takes you in and treats you like family, then you realize we're just people. There's definitely something very magical about meeting a local and then being like, hey, where do you like in your country? What's something that you recommend? And then you go there and you get that experience of that place, but then you also get the experience of like, this is where they wanted me to go. This is where they would go on their holiday, right? And so you experience the country through the locals and through the people that actually live there instead of through other travelers that have been there. And maybe you're going to the same spot that you would have found online through a blog, but because you've gone through this route of the locals, it ends up with a different meaning to it. In your experience of my homeland, this is where I recommend you check out. And that's something special. It's about 5:45 in the morning, and we're off to go into the national park here. And and see if we can find some wildlife while it's still reasonably temperatured out. It's 23 degrees Celsius right now. What will become a blistering 35. See what we can do in doing some hours. Let me see. Yep, there's something right. Initially going into Bou-Hedma, we had just used Google Maps, and that took us down a road in which we did not see any gazelles, we did not see any antelopes. We don't really know anything about this park, except that it's a nature preserve, and there's supposed to be like gazelles here. At one point in history, there was lions and elephants in this part of Africa, but they've gone extinct. But we found a small oasis here. It turns out we don't actually go into the national park. We just went around the national park to where Google Maps led us. But we came across locals hanging out in the hot spring and playing in the hot spring. Good. And I'm like, dude, I love hot springs. Don't get me wrong. But it is almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit and you guys are swimming in a hot spring. I don't get that. So we walked past them and hiked up the mountain and just kind of saw what we could see. And I mean, I love the desert. It's like the ocean, way different than being in a forest. In a forest, you can, sometimes see a few hundred feet in front of you. But in a desert, you can see for miles and miles and miles. And there's something really comforting and reassuring about that, magical about that. It's very special. Okay, you call us when you wake up. Bye. That was Bourbaba. He is a guide here in Tunisia of the park, the national park. I messaged the Facebook conservation community and asked if we could get some information, and so they gave me that guy's phone number. And so we've been kind of talking back and forth today, and he keeps calling me. Yeah, he just loves guiding. He also said that if we need a place to stay, we can stay at his house. So he's super nice. So far, everybody here has been really, really nice. Yeah. This family is really nice. He showed us where to go, and so the next day we go and we actually find the national park. We actually find the gate and entrance to the national park, and the actual preserve is all fenced in. Well, it seems closed, but we'll get out and check it out. We get there and we're like, can we come in? And back and forth in French, Arabic, and we're like, oh, okay, we need to wait for some reason. For us to get authorization, you would have to call somebody, but it's too early to call them. So you think just ask them really nicely and see if that works. Okay. Sorry for waking you. 45 minutes later, we're given passports, taking down numbers, and then we're able to come into the park. Made it. The guy that let us into the park is like, okay, get in the truck. We'll go around. I'll show you around. The guy that I've been talking to is like, tell him you just want to go look around, see the animals and everything like that, but don't tell him that you want to film everything because that's not allowed. You can do it, just don't tell these guys that you're going to do it. And so I'm like, okay, grab the GoPro, let's grab our phones, we'll leave the big cameras, we'll take this little tour, and then we'll go wander around by ourselves. We see some gazelles and we see some antelopes as we're driving around, and we're picking up trash and we're stopping, and they fix some things, and he's showing us around, showing us different wildlife and different areas, and he's like, if you go up there, there's a natural spring, that's where this other thing is, and all this kind of stuff. Our car, the Polo, definitely would not have made this road. And then we blow a tire. I actually am the one that notices it, and I'm like, oh, guys, we're getting a flat, and doesn't have spare in the truck. And so he's like, hey, sorry, we're cutting this tour short. We're going back. And so then it was a race against the clock to get back before the tire's flat. So that was a real speedy tour of the park. Like, I mean, we're not even really supposed to be in here, but they made an exception for us. And now he's driving to go to the mechanic, but we have to leave a few gazelles, a couple oryx, but just from afar. And we didn't get to bring the big camera. It's better than nothing. It's better than not being able to come in at all. Very nice park. It was like a mini safari. Right now we're driving along the outside of the park. This is a dirt road that is manageable enough for the car that we're in. And I'm looking to see if we can see any oryx or gazelles from outside of the park. Bust out the big cameras and see if we can get some footage on that. Our whole goal is we're just gonna walk along the side of the fence and see if we can see some gazelles and antelopes and film those, because like that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to film the wildlife to show you guys what it's about. Like, what do they have in this national park? Why is it important to preserve these things, practice our skills as wildlife photographers, and all that kind of stuff. Nothing yet. We'll get there. We'll get there. So we're just walking along this fence. We go through this ravine, and there's a big hole in the fence. And it's like, I'm kind of like, okay, let's kind of do this quick. We'll stay low, go check this out, see if we can find something, skedaddle. They were generous to us, and they kind of pulled some strings to get us in there and to be able to see the park. The last thing I wanted was for them to feel like we had taken advantage of them and disrespected that. There's a lot of different ways you could look at this. You could look at it as if we just should not have gone through the hole in the fence. Valid point. Valid point. You could also look at it as once we had went through the fence, I should have set a timer and then left when that timer went off. As we were in there, I was like, oh, I'll get to this point and then I'll see something and then we'll turn back. And then it was like, okay, I'm gonna get to this point and then we'll stop and we'll turn back no matter what. But then I would see another ridge and it'd be like, okay, we'll just get to that one because it's so close. We're in there too long and they find us. We like duck in a ravine and he's like, hey man. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? How's it going? And he's like, okay, come on, let's go. So he takes us exactly to where the car is, lift up the fence, we crawl under the fence. He's like, leave, go to Tozer. So as we're leaving, I text blah, 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 and I say, hey man, sorry that we did that. We shouldn't have done that. I feel bad. And he's like, yeah, no problem. I already told them that you saw an antelope and you just couldn't contain yourself and you had to go in. I'm like, dude, you're the man. We weren't trying to do anything bad. It's like our whole goal is to promote the conservation of the park. It's just we're renegade vigilante conservationists. And then how much of this conversation right now is self-justification?
Literally 100% of it.
100% of it. Yeah, we shouldn't have crossed the line.